All right, we're off and running here. Take two with Jerry and Debbie. Heard only right here on EWTN Radio on your local affiliate. Thank you. Thank you, affiliates, for carrying the program. And Sirius XM and on EWTN.com and where else? The EWTN app and iHeartRadio. So we're pretty much all over the place, and we are just grateful that you're listening wherever you are. And no matter where people are, Debbie, I think we all experience and encounter every day these little pesky little things that happen in front of us where people will break a law. I'm talking about, speeding. People, sometimes, even if you're going a little over the speed limit, sometimes people will just blow by you on the freeway, or they'll cross 3 lanes to make a right turn at the very last minute. Or these are the kinds of things we're talking about today, is breaking minor laws, jaywalking. And so, Debbie, we want to hear from people today about their experience of this. Maybe they themselves, you, our listeners, have done some of these things. Is it serious? Do we take this stuff to confession? What's the root of why people, I guess, feel, Debbie, that it's okay to break certain laws, roll through stop signs, or not even slow down at a stoplight? So anyway, this is our discussion today. Should be interesting. Are you trying to suggest, Jerry, that as Christians we really must obey every single law at every time? At every moment? Is that and the reason why I'm asking that is because I will tell you, I confess, dear listeners, I have jaywalked. I have, but I'll tell you why. I mean, it's not the right answer. It probably doesn't excuse me from that sin, but it's 117 degrees sometimes here in Arizona, and use the weather as an excuse. Seriously, and especially in Phoenix, the buildings are very close together, and you can pretty much reach out and touch the building. And so, why would I walk all the way down to the corner and go all the way around just to get to a building that I could just cross the street real quickly? Well, that's a question we want to hear from you, our listeners, about. 1-800-585-9396. And a question in all of this, Debbie, that you implicitly raised there is it possible to be too rigid in our thinking of things like this? Right. But what concerns me, and I feel like I am endangered sometimes, especially by people who will just cross a busy street. We've got one street near where I live. It's 3 lanes in each direction, just a main kind of artery through the city. And the city even built, they recently repaved it and redid the median in the middle. And about every couple, 200 or 300 feet, they put these kind of they left a little opening in the median so that you could cross. There's no painted stripes. It's not a crosswalk, but people are crossing all the time. There have been 2 or 3 fatalities in that area in the last several months. So I, as a driver, and I'm not saying, gee, look at me, let me polish my halo or anything like that. I've done my share of all this stuff as well. But don't you feel, Debbie, sometimes that when people do things like that, you actually they kind of put us, or like a driver at risk. Well, yeah, I would agree with you. Like, for instance, when I was referring to the example of myself jaywalking, I would never do that in the midst of heavy traffic and weave in and out and dodge cars to get across because I don't want to walk to the crosswalk. I totally get that. But there are times where the streets are almost completely empty and you can clearly see there's nobody coming on either side. And so I'm not saying it's right. I mean, I've confessed it publicly now that I have, but I tell you, it's one of those things where it's right in front of you. You can take a couple steps and cross the street, or you're going to have to take 250 steps. And by the time you're there, you're dripping in sweat because it's so hot in Arizona. So it's not right. I'm rationalizing it. I understand that. Maybe I need to hear somebody call in and say, Debbie, you know what? You are flat out wrong. It's wrong. As a Christian, you should walk and lose that extra 2 pounds as you're walking. And go to the corner and do it the right way, push the button and cross like the rest of us. 1-800-585-9396. But Jerry, about halos, my halo fell off a long time ago. Well, I literally sometimes, and this isn't just about situations when we're driving, dear friends. This is about all areas of life. But Debbie, there are times when I'm driving and I'm behind somebody, or I see somebody coming up to a corner from one different direction or another, and I literally will say to myself, that person's not even going to slow down for that light. and they come up and they just barely glance, and I guess once they see out of the corner of their eye that nobody's coming, it's just simply, I don't care what color that light is. I don't care what other people think or if it inconveniences anybody. I'm just going to blow right through this thing. And so, I don't know, dear friends, is relativism sometimes at work in the way we obey or disobey minor laws, or perhaps just plain selfishness? I'm going to do what I want, and I don't care if it affects others. And here's something too, Debbie, as Catholics, does our distinction between venial and mortal sin come into this, maybe even subconsciously, and we say, well, this doesn't rise to the level of abortion or adultery or some of these other things. So I think these are intriguing things that we can have a great conversation with the help of our listeners.
That's interesting, Jerry. So seriously, I'm being really serious now. For jaywalking or a rolling stop or something like that, that's a minor offense to our laws. Is that a sin for the confession? I mean, I've never really thought about it like that.
That's a good question, yeah. I don't know.
Okay, well, let's talk about it. 1-800-585-9396. This is. I'm starting to perspire. See, I'm getting nervous because now I think I've done something wrong, Jerry. So we've got to learn and grow from this show. We're talking about, is it okay to break minor laws, jaywalking, maybe going through stop signs, something of that nature. You may not think it could endanger others, but it really could. It could trigger a whole series of accidents. So call in and share with us your experience about this. As Christians, maybe we need to really be rigid and obey everything because we are an example out there in the world. 1-800-585-9396. That's the number to dial to get on this show. Lots of calls come in very quickly, so there's an open phone line for you, so don't hesitate. You know you got something to say. We all have something to say. So call in, 1-800-585-9396.
We have had a lot of play on EWTN Catholic Radio social media about this topic. Thomas weighed in with his comment regarding is this wrong, or should we consider it a sin, so to speak? He says, I would say no, because these are laws of man, not the laws of God.
Oh,
well, it's an interesting take, Debbie.
I like Thomas.
Well, listen, this is the thing. I mean, St. Thomas, when you think of Thomas, St. Thomas Aquinas would look at certain laws of man. We call them positive laws. They are posited. They don't necessarily come from God. They're not necessarily divine or natural laws. They're just kind of civil laws. Some of them, the law saying abortion is legal. St. Thomas would say that's no law at all. It's an unjust law. But what about laws that are meant to keep things, right order and civility and keep people safe and so forth? So Thomas says he doesn't think it's that serious because these are laws of man and not of God. So, like you said, Deb, the calls are pouring in. We only have about one open phone line here at 1-800-585-9396.
I'm kind of liking Thomas's comment. It kind of supports my my rationalization on why I jaywalked. I kind of,
Well, Thomas, you got a friend. Her name is Debbie.
One friend. Yeah, there you go. I'm trying to push my cause here. So there you go. All right, dear listeners, there is an open phone line just for you. Dial in. You have something to say about this. Do you think it's okay to break minor laws, especially as a Christian? We got to always weave in our Christianity because we want to grow closer to God by the time we're done with this very quick hour we spend together on Take Two. Number to dial is 1-800-585-9396. Also, too, Jerry, you mentioned that Thomas weighed in on Facebook, and we have, thousands and thousands it has reached on Facebook. Please go to EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook and like us. We want to get to 10,000. Hurry. Invite your friends.
I'm Raymond Arroyo with Mother Angelica, A Remarkable Life. In the year 1943, young Rita Rizzo, Mother Angelica, was suffering from such terrible stomach maladies, she braved a blizzard to come here, to the home of Rhoda Wise. Now, Miss Wise was a local mystic in Canton, Ohio, and a purported healer. She greeted Rita at the door, brought her into her bedroom, and sat her in this chair. Now, Miss Wise contended our Lord sat in this chair mystically when they visited from time to time. She didn't touch Rita, she didn't pray over her, she just handed her novena to St. Therese of the Child Jesus and told her to pray that prayer. 9 days later, young Rita's stomach symptoms vanished, and thus began a lifelong love affair with God and untold works. Stay with EWTN as we celebrate the life and legacy of Mother Angelica.
Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak.
More to Life is about living the Catholic difference in our marriages, our families, the way we approach life in general.
It's about celebrating life and our Catholic faith and discovering all the ways God wants to bless us and help us be a blessing to others.
More to Life with Dr. Greg and Lisa Popcak, coming Monday to EWTN Radio.
This is Bishop John Brungart of the Diocese of Dodge City.
This is Colin Donovan, Vice President for Theology.
This is Father Larry Richards, host of Open Line Thursday. Thanks for listening to EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
You're tuned in to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. On this program, as the name implies, we try and present a topic every day, get your input, your takes on it. We try and look at it from all different possible angles or perspectives. Maybe don't exhaust all of them, but we try and come away with a better appreciation of the things that touch upon our daily lives. So today we're talking about breaking minor laws. We're talking about things like rolling through stop signs or lights, or even taking a ream of paper home from the office. Not a law really, but what do you think about these things that are not maybe real serious? It's not murder, it's not adultery, it's things like this. And
Yeah, but that's stealing.
It is, yeah.
Taking a ream of paper and stuff, that's really stealing because you're detracting from
well,
somebody
it is, but
else's.
I was just saying it's not a law per se.
Right,
it's violating a commandment. But
Right.
Okay, 1-800-585-9396. A lot of you have something to say, and Donna, you get to start off in Niagara Falls, listening to EWTN Radio on the Station of the Cross. Hi, Donna. Welcome. You're up first on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay.
Just fine.
I'm driving. Okay. My comment is that I was told both personally by my pastor and in different ways at daily mass, but other people have been told that when we commit fault or venial sin, that though we should obviously be sorry for them and intend to commit them no more, that actual sin is forgiven if we go to communion and on the way to communion say the act of contrition and intend to not commit that fault or sin anymore, like getting irritated at somebody or, as Debbie said, I suppose it depends on what you take, but taking, a couple pens from the office or rolling through a stop sign or whatever it may be. Because confession the priests are so busy today, the confession is really needed for serious sin, where, it's not like we all have faults, we're all going to commit faults. If we went to confession every time we had a fault, why the priest would never get any other work done. He would never be able to perform any other ministry. And so there is a concern that people can become too scrupulous. And that in itself, if you're truly scrupulous, is becomes sin. So you have to have a balance between knowing what is not right and that you should improve on whatever those actions are, and that you try not to do it again, and you ask God for forgiveness from, as you were using as example, more serious sin. Gossiping and ruining somebody's reputation is a serious sin, something like that.
Okay, well, Donna, we got a little difficulty hearing you there on your connection. I think we got the main gist of it. A couple of things I would say, and this is, first of all, priests are, as you know, Donna and Debbie, and all of our listeners should know that, the priests are ordained first and foremost for sacramental ministry. So I don't know that I would say, because these are not more serious sins, that we should be concerned about priests spending time in confession hearing these. Quite frankly, I'd love to see priests hearing confession several hours a day at their parishes, because it certainly wouldn't be wasted time, because there are a lot of people who perhaps have not been to confession for a long time and really ought to go. But that's between them and God and their consciences. But yeah. So anyway, that was one thought. And Debbie, I don't know. Do you have some thoughts for what Donna was sharing?
Actually, I do. Donna, my pastor says the exact same thing that your pastor says, and talks about how during the Mass our very minor grievances are washed away through the rite of the Mass. The very minor venial sins are washed away, and that the confessional really is for the use of things that are more serious or ongoing and need help with that that confessional time. So my pastor says the exact same thing your pastor says. And that always brought me great comfort to know that when I was going to Mass during those penitential rites, that those minor sins were washed away. And that was a very healing and beautiful feeling during Mass. So I was very appreciative that our pastor took the time. He actually spent a series in our church, several weeks, where he was teaching the parishioners about this, so that they could form their consciences better and understand when they did an examination of conscience, what was a serious nature, an ongoing nature, a problem they were having with a sin that was reoccurring all the time, or something that was just a minor thing that, I guess on the scale of things it seems trivial, but it is washed away at Mass. So I just wanted to confirm that my pastor said the same thing, Donna, and I'm sure it brought you that same comfort that it brought me when I heard that. Am I taking that's what you were saying?
Yes, I'm going to be almost 70 years old, and I think that until I also have a spiritual director, and until some of these things were explained to me, you could get yourself all, feeling guilty over, not that you shouldn't feel bad about what you did that was less than perfect, but people are not going to be perfect no matter how well they try. And so it relieves me to know that God loves us so much that he gives us a couple of avenues, depending on the nature of our sin,
right,
to take care of it, to, try to become better. And it actually sort of freed me in the sense of wanting to be more perfect, more, closer to God, through trying to get rid of these faults and these. Because I was going to confession for a while, very frequently, like every 3 weeks. When I read the old books of the saints, that's what they did. They seemed to go every week. Most of them were sisters in convents, but they went every week. And so I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And eventually I was told no. I was asked, are you scrupulous? And I thought, I don't think so. Well, you shouldn't be tearing yourself up over minor things. It's not that you want to continue with those behaviors, but you have to put them in perspective in terms of the bigger picture. So it was very helpful to me, from both my spiritual director and my pastor, to hear these, because I'd never heard that before up until about a couple years ago.
Yeah, and Donna and Debbie.
When I went to Catholic school, everything you did was a sin. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to hell for everything. Which is
I think an important distinction has been made here, and that is we have different ways of having our sins forgiven. Donna, as you so beautifully pointed out, the act of contrition before Mass, the reception of Holy Communion. I just would offer this as a final thought, Donna, and then we'll let you go. We have a lot of calls to get to, but Donna, you made the great point that you want to work on these things in your life so that you can grow closer to God and become holier. You mentioned the saints, and this is where I would say, as we get holier and grow closer to God, certain sins that before in our lives when we weren't as virtuous or knowledgeable or deeply rooted in our faith that might not have been as serious could become a little bit more serious. And Debbie, I think of the saints, some of whom they will write in their diaries that they went to confession saying, I took a second cookie from the refectory at after dinner, and they considered that a serious sin because maybe it was sort of an act of disobedience or something. We would look at that and we would say, well, come on, I took an extra cookie, big deal. But for them, where they were in their spiritual lives and on their path to holiness, it became more serious, at least in their eyes. So I just think we don't want to be scrupulous or too rigid. We already mentioned that at the start of the show.
And a lot of saints struggled with scrupulosity, Jerry.
Right, but we have to at least take this topic seriously and consider where we are and get good advice. I have a spiritual director, Debbie. I know you do, and Donna does, and it's very good to have that objective outside input on something like this.
Right. Well, here's the thing that's kind of a slippery slope. And Donna, thanks so much for your call. Great insight and great wisdom there. Well, one thing I just want to hope you're still listening. One thing I just want to add is that we have to be really careful on what we rationalize. There are times, and I think that's where sometimes priests will struggle on actually giving these teachings on how the Mass does wash away less serious sins, because it's up to the person's, I guess, determination of what they think is serious or not. And we have to be really careful. And that's why I've always encouraged people to really seek out confession for the graces and for the healing aspect of the actual sacrament of reconciliation. And maybe during that time of reconciliation, asking the priest, hey, Father, is it, I have this little thing that bothers me, or something, I fall into this sometimes. Is this worthy of me going to confession? Have Father be the one to say, yeah, you know what? Come to confession. It'll help. It'll heal. Or you know what? Maybe Mass is what can wash you clean of that. And so I think there's that dialogue that needs to happen as well, Jerry. It's hard for all of us to determine what exactly is going to really damage the state of our soul and whatnot. Sometimes it's hard to decipher where is that line, and it's important for us that we do seek counsel to our pastors and our spiritual directors to make sure that we're on the right track. I mean, that's the goal. We all want to attain holiness. We all want to get to heaven, we should all want to get to heaven, and so we need the help along the way to help us on what we're thinking about. I mean, I think you would agree with that, right, Jer?
I would, yeah. And a couple of analogies come to mind. One is if you have something, a little growth on your body or something, you don't know what it is. It may not be serious, but you go to the doctor and you let the doctor tell you what's going on and what the diagnosis is and what the course of treatment is going to be. In other words, I think it's better to, again, not too rigidly or scrupulously, but to at least be ready to accuse ourselves and let the judge show mercy. So, again, Donna, thank you very much. We're going to get to Esther in Boston next on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, listening also to EWTN Radio on the Station of the Cross. Hi, Esther. What are your thoughts on this?
Hi, yes. Well, I was thinking, Debbie actually just said it. I think that venial sins also always should be confessed because of the graces, even though they may be small things. However, I do think that you can, it's easy to fall into scrupulosity if you start to get rigid about all things. Your point further back about somebody blowing through the red light, well, that's a dangerous situation. That's a safety issue. I think that would be wrong on any time that was done, unless there was someone that needed to make it to the hospital quickly for an emergency right then and there. But just doing it because you don't think anyone's around, you don't really care, I mean, that's wrong. But what Debbie was saying, going through the building instead of going around the building, I think sometimes rules and laws and all that, you need to look at the spirit of that. What's the intention? Was that really a bad thing that she did, even though you're supposed to go around the building? She went through the building. Or I'm sorry, Debbie, I don't remember the exact details, but really I think that needs to be looked at. What's the intention? I think that comes into it too. So I think that it's a fine line for venial sins. I think that the saints that we're referring to that took the extra cookie and all that, well, that's something that personally maybe they had between them, and they're trying to become more perfect. They're trying to sacrifice and mortify themselves, and to that something that they felt really badly about,
right,
and want to work on.
Esther, hold that thought. You hear the music. We want to hear the second part of that, and then I want to comment on it. So stay with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
EWTN is now on Twitter. Get short, timely messages from EWTN on your computer or cell phone. It's easy to stay up to date on a wide variety of topics. Pro-life news, Vatican announcements, catechesis, apologetics, the latest EWTN programming, and more. You can link to EWTN on Twitter from our homepage or go to twitter.com/EWTN. At work, at home, at school, and on the road. Stay connected to your world with EWTN's Twitter page.
60 Seconds with Father Mitch Pacwa.
There's a constant spreading of indifference to religion. See that attitude, well, you've got your religion and I have mine, or I have no religion, but that's all up to you. It's all a personal choice. It doesn't matter. If you go to hell and fry, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does! And it matters to me if I do. Also, secularism. Well, we'll just keep religion out of it. That was never the intention of the founders of these United States. Don't buy that baloney sausage. The founders of this country were thoroughly religious, and they intended this to be a very religious country. And Thomas Jefferson, one of the people they sometimes say was irreligious. Thomas Jefferson said, this government cannot work if all we have are the laws. If we don't have religion to help people keep a sense of why they should keep the laws, it'll fail.
The people you know and trust are on EWTN.
What's stopping you from becoming a Catholic?
Why can't women become priests?
I don't understand why I have to earn salvation.
How is it possible that God created everything?
Why do I need to confess my sins to a priest? Why is the Catholic Church so unwilling to The Catholic Church is too rich.
Catholics worship Mary and are committed.
As far as I'm concerned, all religions are equal.
You are called to communion with Dr. David Anders. Today, 2 p.m. Eastern, on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Thanks for being with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. We're on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network, and we're so glad you joined us today. We're talking about, is it okay to break minor laws? And Esther was talking about different circumstances, maybe that are less serious, more serious. And I like where you're going, Esther, probably because you were very complimentary of me, so that always makes me feel good. But keep going, Esther. I just wanted to hear the end, and I wanted just to comment on something you said.
I think the last thing I was saying was about the saints and mortifying themselves, and I really think that as you grow in holiness, things like, not taking that second cookie because you're going to sacrifice, that's something that you want to give that to God, like the little children of Fatima. I remember hearing once that they tightened the ropes that they wore around their waists because they wanted just a little bit of mortification, so it would be a little bit uncomfortable for them, and they want to give that to God. So I think it's very personal at times, but I think it's always good to confess venial sins, even if they do seem to other people to be minor, because there is grace from that, and it shows also that we're focused and we're aware of what we're doing and how it might affect other people, and that's really the key when we want to work towards perfection, which we know we'll never attain, and give it to God.
Right. Well, yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what you said about when I had said it at the beginning about grace, and then you had shared it so beautifully. I just think that's so important. The one thing I've heard is that there is an apprehension sometimes on the part of people to go to confession because they get nervous, or they feel like it's too much of a vulnerable state to be in. But when you really look at what that beautiful sacrament entails, all it is grace and mercy and healing and freedom and all of the wonderful things that our good Lord has promised us on our journey. And so I think if we can shift that mentality of it being something like a benefit, is something that adds to our spirit of joy and our spirit of hope and all the things that God wants us to have, then confession takes on a different tone, and we are eager to derive those graces at all times. I look at it that way, and that's the way I teach it in religious education, because I can tell you that parents all the way down to kids, there's a real a real sense of trepidation when going to confession, almost like having to go to the dentist. Although I love my dentist, but some people feel that way. They get very nervous. Jerry, have you encountered that?
Yeah, I think so. But I get back to what you were saying. It's a faucet, the mercy faucet. And what I would say is just maybe in a final comment here, and we can get Esther's thoughts again. But if something is weighing on the mind or the heart or the conscience of a person, certainly take it to confession. But we need to learn about, as we've said before on this show, the different ways that our sins are forgiven. Again, some are forgiven without the sacrament, the need of the sacrament of confession. And we need to just have a balance and a trust in God's mercy, and try not to get too scrupulous about that. But Esther, any final comments before we move on to Jim in Scranton?
Well, okay, yes, I do. I just wanted to say, Debbie, that was beautiful. And in this year of mercy, I think you're absolutely right. Through frequent confession for ourselves, it's taking that first step and then knowing that God forgives us. That really gives us peace and releases us from the bonds of sin. But in the year of mercy, it also gives us more of an awareness to forgive other people and to know that, well, we ourselves are forgiven, so we want to extend that forgiveness and that mercy to others. And I really hope the grace of this year will just, pour out on everyone to give them courage to take that first step, because confession is such a beautiful sacrament.
We agree. But you said it better than I did, Esther. So thank you so very, very much for your wonderful call, your heart that you shared with us today, and the wisdom, and we just appreciate it. So have a beautiful rest of your day in
Thanks,
Boston,
Esther.
Massachusetts. I love the Boston area. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
Have you been
I'm going to be there. I'm going to be
Are you?
there. I have been there, and
wow.
I'll be there the first week of October for the annual meeting of the vocation directors
Oh,
of the
that's
United
right.
States. So, yeah, it's going to be great.
Lucky. You're so lucky. Well, we're so grateful to Esther. That was a great, great call. Okay, Jim, you are waiting in Scranton, Pennsylvania, listening to EWTN Radio. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Take Two.
Hello.
Hey,
Hi, Jim.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd like to be in Boston myself. I'm a snow person, so I'd like to be up there with the snow. Can't wait for the winter. I was doing through the shortwave here. I came across a frequency and thought I'd call in because something came to my mind. I'm 64 years old, and when I was a kid, getting my driver's license, I remember my mother telling me, gotta watch after you up to 55 miles an hour. After that, you're on your own.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that's always stuck with me, and I raised 3 boys, and I told them that too.
Oh, Jim, now you do realize now, because I am so impressionable. Now that's going to, I'm always going to remember that.
Good.
What's your
Jim,
mom's, yeah, go ahead.
Jim, have you ever been to Southern California and driven on the freeways out here?
No, too hot out there.
Well, you're blessed in many ways, but if you go 55 on a Southern California freeway, you're going to get killed.
Oh, yeah. We're talking like back in the 1960s here.
Right.
I mean, even here they got the speed limit up, I think, to 65 around here now.
Yeah, and I think most areas where I live, and Debbie, probably you, I think it's 65 or 70. Yeah. And I personally hear, Debbie, you confessed earlier to what might be jaywalking. I confess. I typically will go with the flow of traffic, and that will tend to be maybe a little bit over the speed limit. I don't push it too much, and still people go zooming right past us. But yeah. I'm reminded of the Sammy Hagar song from many years ago, I Can't Drive 55. Either of you remember that, Jim or Debbie?
Yes.
We got 4-way stop signs just about on every corner, and I complained to the mayor's office. I said, this is ridiculous. People are going through these stop signs like crazy, I told them. I says, even the police are going through the stop signs.
Oh,
and they're like,
dangerous.
well, what police? I says, I don't write down their numbers. I says, but I see the police going through. My neighbor went through, right through a stop sign down in the corner here, and I asked him one time, I says, why do you go through a 4-way stop sign? And he says, I figured the other guy's going to stop.
Whoops.
Yeah. That's dangerous. That's very dangerous. I mean, pedestrians. I mean, that makes me very nervous. Jim, let me ask you a quick question. What's your mom's first name so I can thank her every single time that I think of her as I go over 55 miles an hour?
Her name is Jean. She passed away 2 years ago.
Oh, bless her
God
heart.
rest
Okay,
her soul.
yes, God rest her soul. And I'll be thanking Jean to remind me to stay at 54 miles an hour.
Okay.
Oh, God bless you, Jim. Thanks for calling in. Thanks for finding us on that frequency, and we appreciate it. Keep listening and keep praying for us.
Thank
we'll
you,
pray
Jim,
for
so
you.
much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, 1-800-585-9396, talking about some of these little laws that we break or we see other people break. Jim used really what is my pet peeve example, and that is people going through stop lights or stop signs, barely slowing down. And I just wonder, is it just a rationalism, like this isn't that big a deal? Is it a sort of selfishness? We have one caller point out, hey, it could be someone driving a pregnant woman in labor to the hospital or something. And, of course, there are all kinds of things that mitigate. If you got pulled over for that, the officer would not write you a ticket. He would give you a police escort to the hospital. So circumstances can sometimes dictate the rightness or wrongness of an action. But call us and let us know. 1-800-585-9396.
Okay, Isela, we are listening to EWTN Radio in Miami, Florida. I love Miami. On Sirius XM 130. Hi, Isela. How are you? Welcome. Hello. Are you there?
Is it Isela?
Isela? Okay, no answer. Isela, I wanted to talk to you from Miami.
Well, Matt, our
Okay.
call screener, can check with her and
Yes,
see if we still have her on the line.
Maybe I messed up the pronunciation of your first name, and that's why you didn't answer.
She'll
you
only
can-
answer to
the
way
correct
her name is truly pronounced.
Exactly. I say that all the time with Giorgiani because everybody messes it up. Okay, I can do this one. Brandon in Des Moines, Iowa, listening to EWTN Radio and Iowa Catholic Radio. Hi, Brandon. Are you there?
Hello.
There we go.
Hi.
Yeah, now we got you, Brandon.
Yay. Hi, Brandon.
Hello.
So what's cooking?
I just kind of agree with one of your earlier callers, Esther, that it has a lot to do with the spirit of the law, not necessarily the exact law. Like one example was the jaywalking. They're there to keep people safe. So if it is busy, you have a safe avenue to use. It's not necessarily so that no matter what time of day, you have to. That's just my thought of it. So. And
Okay.
I can't think of, yeah.
Right. So you're saying that because I said that the streets were completely empty, the building was just about 10 feet from me, and so that because I wasn't endangering anybody, nobody was coming around the corner fast or anything, but probably by me doing that, it was not a major sin. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually agree with that. So, I grew up in New Jersey, and we had a lot of cities in New Jersey and in New York City as well. And it was that same, I guess, mentality, and I got used to that. I would never, ever weave in and out of traffic and try to worry about myself getting across the street and endangering others. Never would I do that because my conscience wouldn't allow me to do that. So I would agree with you, Brendan, that's where my head was at the time when I jaywalked across the street in Phoenix. Why is this all about me? And I'm going to go to confession, Jerry. I think
You made it about you at the beginning by making a global confession, Debbie. So.
Do you hear Brandon laughing? Yeah, Brandon's cracking up because he knows I got to go to confession now, but that's okay. No, that's a good point. What do you think about that, Jerry?
I'm Sylvia on EWTN Catholic Radio summed it up, I think, nicely. Sylvia, thanks for your post. She says, this is a good question. She says, I myself am still conflicted by these thoughts, so I figure it this way. I might as well confess to breaking all of the commandments in my mind. That way I'm covered just in case. So, Brandon, what do you think of that? Just, we've talked on this show already today about if it gives somebody peace of mind, go ahead and take that before the Lord and maybe to a priest in confession.
Well, yeah, there's also, you don't also want to be too scrupulous, though, too. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I think if we're scrupulous, a priest will pick up on that. I really believe that. and we will get the kind of counsel that we need in confession. And so, Brandon, thank you. You gave a great contribution to our program today. We appreciate that. Keep listening, and thanks to the wonderful folks at Iowa Catholic Radio for providing you EWTN Radio. 1-800-585-9396. 1-800-585-9396.
Okay, Lorianne, listening to EWTN Radio in Kansas. Lorianne, welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Lorianne?
Yes. Hey,
Hi.
How are you?
Good. We're doing well. So glad that you called. What's your take on this?
Well, you were talking about the little laws that people break, and so I was thinking, I really hate when people break the laws of grammar and they post, "You're blessed," but they spell it Y-O-U-R.
Oh, yeah.
They should confess that. I'm poor grammatically, or no, it takes away from their message sometimes. So I was just being a little tongue in cheek.
I was wondering if you were. That's certainly, it's a misspelling, but I can't imagine any circumstance under which it would rise to the level of a sin or anything. But about this topic overall, though, Lorianne, what do you think about running a stop sign or a stoplight if it's slow traffic, there's nobody around, maybe it's late at night, or crossing the street, a busy street right in the middle of it instead of going 100 feet up to the crosswalk, or any other sort of scenario that might fit this topic?
Well, they say that you are who you are when no one's looking, and so if you would speed or run a stop sign or take something from somebody when they weren't looking, then you certainly do it when they are. So I think that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that's true. Although, as I was jaywalking, the whole world could see me jaywalking. It was that's pretty obvious. It's not like I'm sneaking it. I'm walking right across the street.
You're a confessed jaywalker.
Huh? What?
You're a confessed jaywalker.
I am. I will tell you that. I know it's bad. It's because I live in the desert, and we try out here to survive living in the desert. So we look for any point of shade, anything we can do to cut corners. But I kind of like what Brandon was saying in Des Moines. It's if you're not trying to cause any harm or anything, that does play to some degree. But Lorianne, let me ask you this question. We touched upon scrupulosity, and it's interesting because as Catholics, there is that tension, if you will, that we could fall into scrupulosity very easily by trying to be too perfect and trying to have a real fear of sinning at all times. What would you say? Yeah, what would you say to fellow Catholic Christians about this idea of balance? I mean, how do you achieve balance without falling into some kind of almost borderline scrupulosity?
Well, I think when you think too much about it, if your true continence is, I'm going to try to live the golden rule, and that's what you do. You don't have to go into the minutia every day and say, "Oh my gosh, I stepped on a crack, and that's bad," and "Oh my gosh, I dropped my comma when I was sewing." I mean, you could get into that, and I don't think God wants us living where we have to ridicule ourselves every day. Everybody else does that for us. We should be building ourselves up and saying, "I did a good job. I lived the golden rule today."
Yeah. Very good point. Very good point there, Lorianne. Thank you again for sharing that. Hope you have a wonderfully blessed day, and thank you so much for listening and calling Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Our phone number is 1-800-585-9396. We are in the home stretch, but we now have that line that Lorianne was on that is open for you to weigh in on this topic of how we approach what might be considered minor laws or infractions. Does it bother you that others do it? Do you sometimes do some of these things yourself? How should we look at it? Are they confession material? 1-800-585-9396. Gail, you're going to be right after Steve, so hang on, Gail. Steve is in Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, listening to EWTN Radio. Hi, Steve. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Welcome, Steve. Good. So what are your thoughts on this?
My question is, how is it possible if a civil law is and it sounds consider or think of as this that I would do?
I couldn't hear you,
yeah,
Steve.
We
I'm
got
sorry.
a bad phone connection there. Can you give it another shot here? We'll see if your phone connection's coming through okay.
If a civil law doesn't conflict directly with a commandment, how is it possible that I should even consider it something that I should confess?
Well,
can you give an example?
Well, like the jaywalking example. I mean, which commandment would you relate that to?
Well,
that's a good question.
That would be something we'd have to. That would be a good topic for a study of the Ten Commandments and what the Catechism might say. It could fall under. I'm not sure which commandment, but as we've discussed, there could be putting yourself in danger,
or others.
There could be putting other people in danger. So, Steve, we're not necessarily saying that it's something that has to be confessed. We're raising the conversation and having the discussion here, but certainly there are things that are much more serious than that. But still, I think there could be circumstances that make some of these things certainly more serious because of the conditions in which they're performed. Debbie?
Right. No, and I fully know that if I'm going to cross the street not at a crosswalk and if I got hit, it's my fault. I broke the law. I should have gone to the crosswalk and done it the proper way. And so yeah, that does infringe on rules that we should be obeying just for the sense of order in our own safety and others' safety. It's a really good question, Steve, because sometimes intention plays into different sins. I mean, obviously, to have the intent to do something wrong, when somebody's not intending to do something wrong to themselves and to others, is that considered? Where does that rate in the sin level? I mean, it's a very interesting topic, and maybe that's why I brought jaywalking up, because it's probably one of the most innocent infractions that there is. But it's I always default to this, Steve. I try my hardest to follow rules and regulations because I believe they're in place so that I can be the best version of myself and to attain the highest level of holiness we can possibly attain here on earth. I'm not saying I'm perfect, as you know, because I have jaywalked, but I try really hard to stay within that because I do believe order is where we will find true freedom. I think when we don't have order, as we see what's going on in this world today, there's nothing but chaos. Nobody knows which way to behave, what to say, what to do. We've got no order, and it's chaotic. To me, I've often said this, it's like one step above the animal kingdom. That's how sometimes we act because we have no idea what the order is. So that's where my come from is, Steve. I don't know if you relate to that at all or if you think I'm kind of off the wall. What do you think, Steve?
No, I totally get that. I agree 100%. I mean, we need order. I do the same thing. I try to, if it's a rule, it's a rule. I try to do, stay within the rules. I'm not perfect like everybody else, but I guess I think when I think of this topic, I sort of think more of like the church and like all of the laws and rules that are associated with the church. And I think to myself, well, if I'm not supposed to eat, anything an hour before communion or this or that or whatever all of the things are that have, come about. And I often think back to the parable where Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. If you're familiar with the one where they're basically squabbling about, the rules that they've come up with. And Jesus asked them, well, whose laws are these? And the answer was, well, Jesus says, well, they're not my laws. They're not my Father's laws. That's kind of how I look at it.
Good. Great take, Steve. You are articulate, and you made your point very, very clearly. And Steve, you and our other callers today and every day are the reason that we just love doing this show every day, because very thoughtful takes and input for the program. So, Steve, thanks so much. We're going to get to here before we wrap things up. Just one final thought on what Steve said, and I'm not here to say that simple things, or seemingly simple things like a jaywalk or a rolling stop through a stop sign or something is necessarily confession material, but we do know from Scripture that all authority comes from God, and civil authorities are charged with coming up with laws that you explained, Debbie, help to keep order and actually help to protect people. So, again, going back to St. Thomas Aquinas, who would say certain positive, as they're called, positive laws are no laws at all if they are unjust.
Right.
there's nothing unjust about putting up a stop sign, because the civil authorities are saying, we're telling you to stop here, because if you don't, there's going to be civil disorder and chaos and people could get hurt. So that's just a final thought that came to me on that. But as promised, Gail is in North Carolina listening to EWTN Radio on Sirius XM 130. Hello, Gail. You're on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. How are you?
I'm well, and hope you are.
Better now that you called.
Breaking minor laws, I think you have to be very careful, because breaking a minor law, your conscience could eventually get to the point, oh, well, I broke that law, so why don't I break the next law? Why don't I break the next law? And as far as making sure you go to confession and a priest, I think you need to be sure who your priests are. As we all know, there are confessors out there that basically says anything goes, and then there's those that will bring down the hatchet on you. And, just to be sure that you have a holy priest when you're going to confessions, and you're right about the scrupulous, we all can go there. And I know in some parts of the world, jaywalking, if you're caught, you get a fine, just as if you were in a vehicle and you broke a law.
Right. No, you're right, Gail. You're right. Actually, the town right over from Phoenix, if you jaywalk, it's the town where our college is, and you would get a fine, and you're absolutely right on. Okay, I am converted. I will not jaywalk anymore. I will not do it. I will go to the crosswalk. If I end up dying from the heat, then so be it. It was all worth it.
God bless.
Oh, thanks.
Day on St. Clair.
Thanks, Gail. God bless you. Wendy, we're so sorry we couldn't get to you. Oh, my goodness, in Ohio. Please share your comment on EWTN Catholic Radio Facebook as you like the page, and also share it with your friends. We want to hear from you.
All right, and don't forget to go to the Jerry and Debbie website. You can get there very easily. Go to Take Two. It's the numeral 2. Take2show.com. Look for the yellow J and D logo along the right-hand side. Click on that. You will get to our website, where you can post prayer intentions. You can get information about how to bring either one of us or both of us out to speak in your area. And we've still got those wonderful Holy Land rosaries from our pilgrimage to the Holy Land, touch to many of the holy sites, the birthplace of Jesus, the burial place of Jesus. Just click on the sunburst on the homepage. Find out how you can get your own Holy Land rosary. And these are just special, one of a kind. Deb?
And Jerry, also on the site, the One Faith DVD set is turning out to be a phenomenal fundraiser for parish organizations. Please contact us if you want to take part. I have been in fundraising for over 25 years, and this is one of the best fundraisers I have ever seen, and that's on the Jerry and Debbie site as well, Jerry. I'm excited about that.
3 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio. Our good friend, Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, guest hosts Open Line. He'll take your calls on the new evangelization and more. And tomorrow, we're going to talk about living on Cloud 9. How much of your life is in the cloud, on servers somewhere in the world? Do you feel good about that? Do you think your personal information is safe there, Debbie? That's going to should be a lively discussion tomorrow about living on Cloud 9.
But until then, Jerry and I want to wish you a beautiful and blessed day. See you real soon.